Just when I thought I was done with What If, we get Marvel Zombies, which is basically more What If. This miniseries is a continuation of What If Season 1 Episode 5, which means it branched starting 2 weeks before Infinity War, during the events of Ant-Man and the Wasp, which is important to keep in mind. With that, let's just get into the show. The group we open up with consists of Kamala Khan, aka Miss Marvel, Kate Bishop, aka Hawkeye, and Riri Williams, aka Ironheart. How these three ended up together is beyond me, given that Kamala is from New Jersey, Kate is from New York, and Riri is attending MIT. Just kidding. The writers probably thought she was attending MIT, which justified her being closer, albeit still a state away. But in reality, the zombie apocalypse happened in 2018, which means she wouldn't be at MIT because she didn't graduate high school until 2020, meaning she would still be in Chicago and likely wouldn't have even built this suit yet, unless she had built it without MIT funding in Chicago, then brought it to Massachusetts, which is a major stretch. Kamala and Kate ending up together is certainly strange as they are a state away from each other, but Riri being here doesn't make any sense. Also, Kamala has her bangle even though it didn't get sent to the cons until the show, which takes place long after 2018, and even later than this show takes place. Well, anyway, these three hear, then see, a Quinjet falling out of the sky, and its pilot had swallowed an important piece of tech, which is just crazy contrived. Out of anywhere on Earth, he happened to crash the Quinjet near our group, with probably the only person left alive in the world who can scan for that sort of thing, because Riri is just the best ever, as everything she's in insists.
God, you're good.
There's a jump scare where after they pull the thing from his stomach, he lunges forward, except he doesn't reach for them with his arms, which is really weird. They were nowhere near as cautious as they should be given the situation, so if he had reached with his arms, he likely would have actually gotten them. They get attacked by Zombie Clint, who is just by himself. Pretty strange given how the zombies, including him last episode, always seem to be in packs. And he shoots at them a few times before they turn the corner, which makes him have to hit a shot that bounces 3 times before heading straight for a running Kamala. There's no way Zombie Clint is that good of a shot. Normal Clint, while skilled beyond anything a human has ever achieved, or probably will ever achieve, still has some level of sense to the shots he makes. Even the one shot where he isn't looking could have been gauged based on hearing the Chitauri speeder. Not realistic, sure, but consistent with the insane level of training and skill he is shown to have in universe. In the What If episode, Zombie Clint misses most of his shots, and the one he does hit fails to be a kill shot. There's no way he'd be able to hit a shot here that ricochets perfectly off of multiple unseen walls to go right at a target he couldn't see or hear because they're so far away and just traveling on foot. Not even regular Clint could hit that shot, so there's absolutely no way Zombie Clint would. Well, Kamala shields it. Not sure why she wasn't just shielding all of them the whole time, but this allows Kate to grab the trick arrow and save it for later. Riri reveals that the thing they found was a transmitter for cross-galactic broadcasts that has been shrunk. It's supposedly made by S.H.I.E.L.D., which partially doesn't make sense because they don't have access to shrinking tech. That was Hank's whole life goal. And further doesn't make sense because S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't exist after the events of the Winter Soldier. Riri says she's on the S.H.I.E.L.D. network, even though there would be no S.H.I.E.L.D. network at this point due to what I just said. But this allows her to get a ping from Ohio that there is an operational S.H.I.E.L.D. base where they could use the transmitter. They argue until deciding to bring the device there, and during this conversation, Kamala does this, which seems like a small detail, but it adds on top of their casual demeanor and just everything else, to make it not seem at all like this is a group that has survived through 5 years of zombie apocalypse. We learn this time frame later in the show. Carelessly wasting food like that is crazy, even that small of an amount, because Kamala is excited to find even a single can of tomato soup, and that was their haul for the day. After heading out in the armored car Riri put together, they find a giant chasm through the mountains, which they drive through until lasers start coming from the sky, which blasts their car into a tumble. Kamala uses her powers to put shields around the inside of the car, And while that would prevent broken glass from getting in, it's not going to protect them from the actual impact of the car getting launched and tumbling over multiple times. Kamala has some enhanced durability because she's part Nor or whatever, but the other two are just regular people. They all are uninjured by this crash though, so that's pretty convenient. They run for a little, then, after theorizing that this is what blew the hole in the mountain range, hide behind a small piece of rubble instead of continuing to run farther away. Not a great plan. They get surrounded by zombies and start moving until one of the two figures from the sky crashes down, and it's a heavily damaged Icarus. Instead of telling our heroes to run or anything about what's going on, which would be in character as his goal is to keep humans alive, he just stands there until the other figure, Zombie Captain Marvel, crashes down and they continue their fight. As our trio is running away, Kate turns around for no reason, which somehow catches Zombie Captain Marvel's attention, causing her to fly very slowly at Kate, as Kate fires the trick arrow from earlier at her, which is revealed to be a confetti arrow, so Captain Marvel vaporizes her. What an incredibly dumb move on Kate's part. If this flying guy with laser eyes couldn't deal any significant damage to this person, why would you think a random arrow would? Especially one you don't know the function of. The fact that it even pierces Captain Marvel doesn't make sense given that she has been able to tank attacks from Icarus this whole time. Kamala, out of anger, attacks Captain Marvel, who takes way too long to fight back, so Kamala manages to survive this. Riri gets bitten, so she injects herself with an anti-zombie serum she made, because of course she made that. In the time between the bite and her injecting the serum, she wasn't infected yet. Keep that in mind for later. Kamala gets taken away by Friday, who then returns to fight with Riri. Then Kamala gets picked up by a figure on a motorcycle. After a weird dream, it's revealed that this person was Blade, but now the avatar of Khonshu. So not sure why he was riding a motorcycle when he can just fly. He says about the place they were just in,
two beings of immense power, each unable to beat the other.
Which should not be true. Captain Marvel would absolutely crush Icarus. It's not even close. He can fly pretty fast. She can fly at the speed of light. He died when he flew into the sun. She restarted a sun from the inside. Blade drives them to the shield base Riri and friends were heading to, where they find Melina with Alexei, Yelena, and the Widows. She controls the zombies with the mind control she had developed for the pigs, which is a fine bit of continuity, until you think about it and it kinda isn't. The mind control required some kind of device being put in through brain surgery, as she was directly able to interface with and monitor different functions through their brain. This would be a major hassle to do individually on each of these zombies. The only way that could possibly be achieved would be with an insanely large amount of anesthetics to prevent the zombie from attacking you while doing so, which I'm not sure how they'd have access to in a zombie apocalypse. I highly doubt Melina or anyone here is skilled enough to personally administer the surgery required anyway. And that's ignoring the resources. It's not like they're in a position to manufacture tons of these devices all of a sudden. Anyway, this shield base is a location where the transmitter, which we now learn was for contacting the Nova Corps,
SHIELD believed they had the technology to heal our world.
was supposed to be usable, but
Fallout from the Wakanda event scatters signals in our atmosphere. No radio waves get out.
we'll come back to that later. The reason it was found inside a guy in a Quinjet was because SHIELD built it, but
Just before deployment could happen, their base was overrun by a zombie horde.
okay. So again, SHIELD doesn't exist. But even if they did, and I guess they somehow knew about the Nova Corps, the Wakanda events didn't happen until at least 2 weeks after. If they knew about the Nova Corps, then why didn't they already have a method of contacting them that they could have just used in those 2 weeks, rather than having to make something new? But ignoring that, they get overrun by zombies right before they're able to fly it into space, which makes the single zombie flying the Quinjet with the thing in his stomach very strange. There's nobody in the Quinjet to give him that wound on his forehead and turn him into a zombie. So I guess this zombie flew a Quinjet for no particular reason, which I guess it could possibly do, given that in What If, Hank's zombie pilots the quantum vehicle. I just don't know why it would do that. And the transmitter being in his stomach is a weird move. Zombies don't eat random stuff like that, so it seems like the guy, knowing he was going to turn into a zombie, swallowed it, like Bruce swallowing the thumb drive in The Incredible Hulk. Ignoring how delicate tech likely wouldn't be functional after sitting in stomach acid, which is a problem I have with it both there and here, it is a clever move for Bruce, using his stomach as basically his one inventory slot, like a slug cat in Rainworld, as leaving it anywhere else would not guarantee that he still has it after turning into the Hulk and back again. This Quinjet guy is turning into a zombie. Having it after becoming a zombie would not be helpful unless you are turned back into a human. And if that happens, then a cure has been found, which defeats the need for the transmitter anyway. If your options are leave it somewhere that it can be found by surviving humans, or swallow it, the latter is a bizarre thing to do, and only worked because he, by insane luck, happened to end up near someone who has tech that can scan for it. The reason it's shrunk is because
I must have miniaturized it with Pym particles.
even though, again, S.H.I.E.L.D. never had Pym tech, Pym's life goal was to keep it away from them. This show seems to think Pym tech is more commonly accessible than it actually is. There was an earlier exchange.
It's radiating quantum isotopes, so most likely it's been
Shrunk.
Even though the mechanics of this tech aren't widely known. And while Riri in her infinite knowledge may possibly have known this somehow, there's no way Kamala knew the connection between quantum whatever and shrinking things. The base then gets attacked by Wanda's army. Zombie Hawkeye jumps around like he's a super soldier and not just a regular guy. The main characters retreat, then Melina stops running and closes the door to stand in the hallway as she takes over the zombie horde by punching things into her tablet, which is total nonsense. It's portrayed like she's hacking them, which, best possible read I can get is there's some sort of invisible gas that the base can release that allows her to take them over. But if that is set up, it shouldn't take that much typing to activate, and that can't be all that's needed for mind controlling, because otherwise, Dreykov could have used that on political figures so easily, rather than only being able to mind control the widows and influence the political figures that way. And if Melina had the ability to do this, why wasn't this the backup plan for once the zombies breached the base? She could have just done it from where she was monitoring, and Melina didn't need to be on this side of the door to do this. If she had taken any longer, then the zombies would have reached her when there is no benefit to doing it from this side of the door. The only possible benefit of any sort would be that she has a short exchange with Okoye, but there's no way she would have known that this would happen, and it's barely a delay at all anyway, because Okoye throws a spear through her that somehow makes it through the blast door as well. Vibranium is a strong metal, sure, but Okoye is a regular human that couldn't throw a spear with that much force. It being vibranium wouldn't matter. Ghost comes and attacks them, so she fights Blade and has super speed, which is not a power she has, but Blade still beats her anyway, and they escape. Red Guardian and Yelena are sad over Melina's death, but they resolve to make it worth it. Which is something. It's the one serviceable bit of characterization that this show does, and it just does it over and over again for a bunch of different characters. But it's better than nothing, I guess. Then begins the next episode where we open to San Francisco where the outbreak started. We follow Shang-Chi and Katie as they run from zombies until they get found by Jimmy Woo. After being surrounded by zombies, Shang-Chi starts fighting them hand to hand, even though the Avengers got taken out by zombies. I don't think an unenhanced guy with fighting prowess is going to make it through this unscathed, when a single bite would turn him into a zombie. But he somehow does. Then the group gets saved by the 10 rings coming in. But a conversation between Shang-Chi and his dad results in Shang-Chi getting bitten, and the virus spreads way faster than it did for Riri, which makes Wenwu need to, in the heat of the moment, give the rings to Shang-Chi to prevent the spread of the virus. After doing this, he stops fighting, even though this episode thinks it's possible to hold the zombies back hand to hand, as Shang-Chi was doing. And Wenwu didn't even have to give him all the rings, as only one was required to block off the virus from spreading. Wenwu could have kept 9 and continued to protect Shang-Chi, as we later see that the rings can be split between 2 people. And putting the incompetence aside, this is kind of a weirdly selfless act for Wenwu at this point. Doing this exact thing was meant to be the conclusion to his supposed arc, which did not happen in this universe. Then Shang-Chi, Katie, and Jimmy get taken by the Ten Rings to escape. We jump ahead 5 years, and this group is now nomadic and traveling in cars. Not sure why they didn't just post up at the Ten Rings' hideout when that is far from where any zombies would be, and has apt defenses should any zombies show up. Also, everyone from the Ten Rings other than Death Dealer inexplicably disappeared. On the way to the city on the sea, they get attacked by Skrulls because they have cows. The action scene is fine, I guess, nothing special. What is notable is that Jimmy Woo's dialogue is actually terrible.
You know what? You are so deadly. Oh, we're so badass.
Woo was previously funny, specifically because, despite being a pretty serious guy, he was a little awkward and not great with people. Now he is not serious at all, because he's been morphed into the comic relief that simps for Death Dealer. I'm not going to mention any more of his dialogue, but it's all this terrible. Katie is cringe too, of course, but that's in character. In general, the MCU just hasn't been able to do humor well anymore. Ant-Man and the Wasp, which Jimmy is originally from, actually had very well-structured humor, with a lot of setup and payoff, or character-driven humor that was based off of consistent character traits, whereas nowadays, continuity, characterization, you name it, is on the chopping block if it allows for a joke, which often doesn't even end up being funny. Both Ant-Man movies are underrated, and I miss that level of quality and humor. Anyway, I find them having cows pretty weird as well, because earlier Alexi said,
"She used to have pigs. The zombies ate them."
So zombies don't just eat humans, but all animals. So you'd think that 5 years into the apocalypse, it would be extremely hard to find any cows. But they just somehow have a bunch, I guess. This group runs into the group from last episode, and begin to fight because Alexi sees that Shang-Chi is part zombie, but they get interrupted by John Walker announcing the arrival of Zemo. This is such an absurd combination of characters to be together. And Zemo says,
"There are heroes among us, doing heroic things, making trouble and noise."
He then, after saying he's heard about this group protecting people on the road, says,
"I hate heroes, always hiding dangerous ideas behind your powers and silly masks."
Even though only a single person out of this group has a mask, and wearing a mask isn't what the majority of heroes in the MCU do. And trust me, we'll get to Zemo's characterization later. Zemo then lets them aboard. We'll see the reasoning behind that later. It's revealed that the city on the sea is the Raft. And frankly, it is absolutely insane that Zemo has control of this thing. It's not even where they put him at the end of Civil War, which I assume was the mistaken belief of the writers of this show. He was at multiple different facilities in Berlin until being put in the Raft in 2024, long after the zombie outbreak started in 2018. It makes no sense that he'd somehow gain control of this very important, very secure location, but I guess he just magically did. Zemo pays lip service to the same one character bit they managed to do in this show of,
"Let us honor the ones we have lost."
Then they dive deep into the ocean. It's mealtime, and Alexi is told he can have as much food as he wants. This show really doesn't portray anything like it's a zombie apocalypse where resources would be scarce. Surely in a civilization of this size, that is currently cut off from any sources of food, the food would have to be rationed. Especially for these folks, considering what we will later learn Zemo's purpose is for them. Blade isn't eating anything, which is strange. Steven and Mark still had to eat things. Jimmy does a magic trick, which I guess shows they remembered one thing about his character. As they're in the depths, they catch the attention of zombie Talokanil. That's what Namor's people are called. And this is treated as a regular occurrence by John and Zemo, which begs the question, why travel so low anyway? It's not like the zombies are going to be traveling on boats, and if they do, then you can dive a little bit underwater when they show up. Traveling deep like this, and catching the attention of these Talokanil zombies, is entirely pointless and counterproductive at the moment. It leads to them catching the attention of Namor, so Zemo throws Kamala's group out into the ocean because
"We've learned the only way to stop him is to feed him.
And yet, he doesn't close the door that he opened to flush them out, which allows zombie Namor to plow through the cell door with this group, which somehow doesn't injure or kill Zemo even though he was standing right in front of it. If the walls and doors can't keep Namor out, then this group would have been overtaken the first time they ran into him. So the walls and doors must be able to keep him out. This means that the plot relies on Zemo being incredibly dumb for not closing the door behind this group after flushing them out. Very cool. A fight ensues where Zemo tells everyone to get into the escape pods, but when it comes to the heroes,
You reap what you've sown.
Namor attacks our group, which then breaks through the wall to where Walker and Zemo are. There's more fighting, and Walker's death has extremely bizarre slow-mo that is really low frame rate and thus looks really bad. A weird editing choice that this show does multiple times. This fight is one of the major points where there is excessive gore, because this is the show where they're allowed to do it. That isn't necessarily a problem, but evidently they were prioritizing that over quality storytelling. They beat Namor, but Yelena is trapped and dies because she had to go to a different part of the raft to do the manual override, and the group heads to New Asgard. Now, before we get to episode 3, let's take a look back at a scene involving Zemo to see how well this interpretation of his character holds up. In Captain America Civil War, as Iron Man dukes it out with Cap and Bucky, Zemo listens to what earlier in the movie may have seemed like a phone call.
You should have seen his little face. Just try, okay? I'm going to bed. I love you.
And is now revealed to be a voicemail.
You should have seen his little face. Just try, okay? I'm going to bed. I love you.
Recontextualizing the earlier scene in the context of
I lost everyone.
this voicemail is the last piece of his wife that he still has after his family died due to the Battle of Sokovia. The mysterious motivation behind his various schemes in the movie is ultimately to destroy the Avengers, because of the same thing that has come up again and again over the course of the movie, their collateral damage. T'Challa, after overhearing Zemo admitting that he killed T'Chaka, says,
I almost killed the wrong man.
as he has been chasing Bucky all movie. To which Zemo responds,
Hardly an innocent one.
because of how much he hates Hydra,
Hydra deserves its place on the ash heap.
who Bucky served, albeit unwillingly, for a long time, and because of the info he just revealed to Tony. T'Challa asks,
This is all you wanted. To see them rip each other apart.
because from Zemo's prior actions, it seemed like he was going after the Winter Soldiers so that he could use them for something bigger. But ultimately, he just came here to make Cap and Tony fight it out over Bucky. Zemo replies with a story,
My father lived outside the city. I thought we would be safe there.
as he and his family lived in Sokovia during the events of Age of Ultron. That's what this is all about. He continues,
My son was excited. He could see the Iron Man from the car window.
which shows that people liked and trusted superheroes at the time, including Zemo himself.
I told my wife, don't worry, they're fighting in the city. We're miles from harm.
Thinking that the Avengers would be able to do their job and keep everyone safe. But ultimately, their only way to stop Ultron's plan was to blow the airborne Sokovia to pieces, dropping large chunks of it over the surrounding area. Miles away was not far enough to be safe.
When the dust cleared and the screaming stopped, it took me 2 days until I found their bodies.
Zemo in Civil War is shown to be a very persistent man,
I have experience and patience. A man can do anything if he has those.
which is exemplified here in that he was willing to look for his family's bodies for 2 days rather than giving up and waiting for damage control to find them. What he found was
My father, still holding my wife and son in his arms.
the Avengers had failed him. Their actions had led to his family dying rather than being protected.
And the Avengers? They went home.
The sentiment from a lot of people in the movie is that the Avengers seem to not care about the collateral damage they leave behind. They have their reasons, of course. It would be impossible for them to save everyone or to always help out those affected by their battles, as they are simply very busy and can't be out 100% of the time or know about 100% of the places their help is even needed. But it's hard to acknowledge those reasons when you are the one being impacted by that, and when there seems to be no accountability in place to prevent those things. That's why the Sokovia Accords were made in the first place. But to Zemo, restricting the Avengers wasn't enough. What they did to his family can't be undone, and they need to die for what they did. However, he acknowledges his own physical inability to take them on.
I knew I couldn't kill them. More powerful men than me have tried.
But he is far too persistent to let that stop him. He knew a way that he could get his revenge.
But if I could get them to kill each other...
His plan was carefully constructed so that he could reveal information he had found that would tear them apart, and it worked. Zemo then acknowledges his own collateral damage.
I'm sorry about your father. He seemed a good man.
He isn't happy that T'Chaka died as part of his plan. He doesn't think he deserved to, but he was too determined to get his revenge for that to stop him. Zemo then says something very interesting.
With a dutiful son.
He sees T'Challa trying to enact vengeance on the man that killed his father, and commends him, despite that man happening to be Zemo himself. Zemo's mentality runs deep, and he is no hypocrite. He thoroughly believes that revenge is justified in this situation, and that he deserves death for what he has done, just as he believes the Avengers deserved what he did to them. T'Challa sees how deeply Zemo has fallen into this path,
Vengeance has consumed you.
and how it is the same thing that has Tony trying to kill Bucky, despite the rift that would cause between him and Cap,
It's consuming them.
and refuses to let himself go down that same path.
I'm done letting it consume me.
Despite that being his motivation this entire movie as well, he now realizes that vengeance isn't true justice, and sees how it blinded him to the point of almost killing Bucky,
Justice will come soon enough.
as it's not T'Challa's place to get revenge on Zemo. He was not the only one hurt by him, and shouldn't be the arbitrator of justice here. Zemo, seeing that his family is gone and never coming back, says,
Tell that to the dead.
before trying to shoot himself. His work is done, and he doesn't have anything to live for anymore. But T'Challa manages to stop him and says,
The living are not done with you yet.
as allowing him to die would be letting him get off too easy. T'Challa now sees that killing him is not the best way to make him pay for what he did, because he should keep him alive and have him face his punishment. Zemo in Civil War is a fantastic villain. He is smart enough to put together a complicated plan that ends up working out, even if there are some elements that could have used some ironing out in the writer's room. It's impressive how he's able to give the impression that he's after the Winter Soldiers so strongly that not only Cap and Bucky believe it, but some of the audience does as well. The Winter Soldiers were a ruse.
I'm grateful to them, though. They brought you here.
Just a bait to get Bucky and Cap to the Hydra base, with Tony on their tail, because this was the location that had the footage of Tony's parents being killed. Zemo does kill the Winter Soldiers once he gets there, which confuses some people into thinking his goal was to kill all super people, including the Winter Soldiers. The writers of Falcon and the Winter Soldier had this misconception.
Super soldiers go against everything he believes in.
But in reality, killing the Winter Soldiers was just a little piece of justice he did because it was convenient. He has specific hatred for Hydra, as mentioned earlier. The line,
Did you really think I wanted more of you?
is referring to Winter Soldiers specifically because they were Hydra weapons that, like Bucky, he considers far from innocent. He is not referring to super people in general, as is made clear by his lack of hate for T'Challa. His only goal is to get revenge on the Avengers specifically. He literally tries to kill himself when there are plenty of super people still out there. It's clear his goal is much narrower than hating superhumans or super soldiers in general, further shown by his satisfaction at what he did achieve.
So how does it feel to see it fail so spectacularly? Did it?
The misconception that Zemo hates super people in general is what led to his characterization in this show, where he supposedly hates heroes as a whole, which is just bizarre. Zemo does not hate T'Challa, nor heroes that weren't involved in the Battle of Sokovia, such as Spider-Man. And he certainly wouldn't hate people that show up to his city on the sea offering protection, simply because they have powers or are well trained. Taking a step back, Zemo running a city doesn't really make sense, especially when he does so at the cost of innocent lives. This is directly against his sense of justice. Sure, he is willing to kill T'Chaka, but he acknowledges that he deserves to die for that, and only did it because it was achieving the one purpose he had left. He even wanted to avoid that method if possible.
I'd have to use other, bloodier methods to find what I need. I don't look forward to that.
When his family was killed, it left him with one purpose, which, depending on how the writers interpret his mindset, either is already fulfilled or would be what he pursues now. So realistically, once the zombie outbreak happens, Zemo either kills himself or he tries to hunt down the zombie Avengers so that the Avengers don't get to live in any form. I think the latter is a really cool thing they could have run with and reveals a potential for the zombies show that could have been much more interesting. The show didn't have to be an overarching story that requires them to nonsensically make a bunch of random characters end up together. It could have been an anthology series where each episode follows what one person or group is doing, with Zemo hunting the zombie Avengers as one of the episodes. All in all, Zemo is completely assassinated here, and John Walker is too, because you can't tell me that someone who won 3 Medals of Honor would be complicit to throwing away innocent lives like this, no matter how hard the camera angles and music try to convince you that he's a bad guy. Although, I guess it is in character if we're comparing him to the just as out of character portrayal in Thunderbolts.
If he's a civilian, he knows too much. I say we throw him back into the fire.
The modern MCU is just great. Thus begins episode 3, which picks up right after the What If episode. The main characters of that episode fly right into Wakanda, despite the fact that there wouldn't be anybody alive to open the barrier for them by manning the DJ table. Yes, that was an actual thing in Wakanda Forever. But anyway, once they arrive, they run into Thanos. And I didn't mention this in my video on the What If episode, but it doesn't make any sense for Thanos to end up here. Vision never made it to Wakanda, and that's the only reason Thanos went there in Infinity War. They fight zombie Thanos, and in this fight, he uses the stones without closing his fist, which breaks the one rule the gauntlet has. Thor, Rocket, and Groot show up. How did Thor know to come here? This is a question people ask about Infinity War, but the answer there is that he would go somewhere on Earth, likely New York, see in the news that crazy stuff is happening in Wakanda, then head there. Here, there is no news anymore, so he wouldn't be able to just find this place like he did in Infinity War. He just impossibly ends up here. Then Thanos kills Rocket and Groot, and the fight continues. At one point, he destroys Stormbreaker with just the Power Stone, despite it beating a beam that used all 6 stones in Infinity War. Black Panther takes him on with the Mind Stone, holding it in one hand to amplify his attacks, which is not something we've ever seen it do. I'm not sure how he'd know it can do that. During the fight, zombie Thanos teleports the Mind Stone to himself, which is an insanely precise teleport that in no way is possible using just the stones. If it was, then he would have teleported the Eye of Agamotto to himself at the start of the Titan fight, and Infinity Ultron would have just teleported the Soul Stone to himself in the finale of Season 1. After Thanos puts the stone into his gauntlet, Black Panther tackles him into the molten vibranium reactor that happened to open up from one of Thanos' earlier attacks. If Thanos hadn't randomly opened that up on accident, or if the Black Panther versus Thanos fight hadn't ended up right up against the reactor, or if Thanos teleported as he was falling into the reactor, then zombie Thanos with 6 stones is now running loose. But that would be inconvenient for the writers, so they just took this extremely contrived route to get here. This resulted in the stones being destroyed and releasing their energy, which will become relevant later. Peter and Scott get saved by the sorcerers, and have been with them up until the present day. We go back to our prior group, Alexei goes through the same micro-arc again, and they head to New Asgard. Zemo acts entitled and whiny.
Can someone please? My god, you people are so...
Because they don't know how to write Zemo anymore. Then Valkyrie asks where their invitation was, and they come up with terrible excuses, rather than just explaining that they are here for a ship so that they can cure the zombie virus. Khonshu gets them in, but Blade says,
"Don't touch anything,"
and smacks food out of Jimmy's hand at one point. We'll get back to these details in a bit. Wanda shows up pretending to be human, but reveals that the feast was an illusion, and was actually zombie parts that are turning people into zombies, so that she can have an army of Asgardians. The zombie food explains Blade's earlier actions, except not really. There is the exchange,
"No heads up on the zombie food."
Khonshu doesn't tell me everything.
Which makes no sense. If Khonshu knew about this, which seems to be the case given that Blade was discouraging them from eating, why didn't he tell Blade so that Blade would forcefully make sure Alexei didn't end up eating all of this? Why did Khonshu even let Blade lead our heroes here if Wanda is here? Why does Blade listen to him if Khonshu just stupidly leads him into terrible situations like this? A fight breaks out, Zemo dies, Death Dealer dies, then that upsets Jimmy so he gets enraged, then dies. This fight, and really all the fights in the show, ignore how many zombies there are, and just has a few come at each character every now and then, so that they're manageable, rather than our protagonists getting swarmed, which would actually happen. Plus, all the zombies here are Asgardians, and thus should easily overpower most of our protagonists. Wanda is put on pause because, of course she is. She is now shown to be able to warp reality to a crazy degree, and there's no way any of our heroes can combat that. Alexei gets turned into a zombie, then they fly away in the ship, but Wanda starts pulling them back and trying to convince Kamala to work with her.
"The hope you seek is down here with me."
It might have worked better if she hadn't randomly dropped her illusion and screamed earlier.
"I want..."
But at that moment, the jump scare was more important than character motivation, I guess. Thor comes in to stop her in a fight that makes no sense. Thor lands multiple hits on Wanda, which should just delete her, because she has no super durability, but Wanda just kind of does whatever the plot needs at any moment. They make it out and start transmitting the signal. Shang-Chi says,
"No, Kamala, you did it. Because of you, we have an opportunity to save this planet."
Which is an extremely clunky line that makes me want to believe my friend's headcanon that this show was an in-universe fanfiction written by Kamala. Another example of terrible comedy happens when Kamala is about to activate the signal, then says,
"I don't know what button to push."
A little anticlimax, not the worst joke, until Valkyrie says,
"It's the yellow one."
Then after multiple clarifications, it's revealed that the set of buttons looks like this. Why would you specify the yellow one when there are multiple yellow ones? That joke just doesn't make sense. It's like if you had a whole building full of Spider-Men, then had a character who is extremely used to this being the case, say to stop Spider-Man, for the sake of a joke. That wasn't even funny because it's been done better before. But anyway, the Nova Corps show up, but it's just revealed that they are here to quarantine Earth. The fourth and final episode opens with our protagonists running from the Nova Corps because Valkyrie didn't turn around when asked to go back or be destroyed. Not sure why she didn't do that. Then she says,
"They could have asked us nicely."
Which is yet another joke that doesn't work because they literally did. She just sat there not following their orders. They get blown up, then as they are falling, the one thing I like about the show happens, which is Blade aura farming while falling. It's a brief visual gag, but I think it's pretty funny, unlike any other attempt at humor in the show. They all get saved by portals, although I'm not sure how the sorcerers found all our heroes and pinpointed their exact spot over the ocean. Scott says to Blade,
"All white, huh? It's a bold choice for a zombie apocalypse."
Which just makes me think about the fact that our heroes never get a change of clothes, yet their clothes are always in pristine condition despite frequently fighting zombies. It is ultimately a nitpick, but it's a pretty jarring one when you think about it, and they're the ones who brought it up. One of the sorcerers says,
"We watched helplessly as the plague consumed the planet."
Which makes me think about Doctor Strange getting turned into a zombie. If the sorcerers watched all this happen, which absolutely would be the case for him, as he's in New York and the outbreak started in San Francisco, why wouldn't he be safe along with these sorcerers? Since they still had the Eye of Agamotto at the time, they could have just turned the Earth back like Strange did at the end of his movie. So they just had to make him a zombie off-screen because he couldn't have become one in any way that makes sense. Then it's revealed that after the Wakanda events, the sorcerers gave Bruce the protection spell, then portaled him over to Wakanda to contain the Infinity Stone energy that got released. Except, Hulk was left surrounded by zombies fighting Zombie Wanda at the end of the What If episode. If Thanos and Captain Marvel can be given the virus, then Hulk surely can, especially with how powerful Wanda is. Hulk should be a zombie, but he just isn't. And also the protection spell is shown to run out, so it would run out from the Infinity Stones' energy until just Hulk is left to bear them, in which case he would die, because we see in Endgame that he can't bear the power of the Infinity Stones for very long. Wanda is trying to get this power from him, so the sorcerers and Scott ask our protagonists to join them in fighting Wanda. Kamala has a scene where she cries and thinks about all the people she lost over the course of the show. Not her family though, because that didn't happen on screen in the show, so the writers didn't think of that. Shang-Chi gives a terrible speech to her about how she gave people one last chance to fight, so it's okay that she got them killed. I kind of get the sentiment, but the way they wrote it doesn't work. It works for her though, so they join the fight. Wanda's army has a ton of Asgardian ships, even though Asgard and all its ships were destroyed. So I guess she created them with her powers? We'll get back to her power levels later. Hulk is able to actually utilize the power of the stones with no visible effort, despite what we saw in Endgame, which lets him obliterate Wanda's armies, but she keeps attacking him with more and tries to get him to give up the power, but then the heroes show up. There's a fight, and the intelligence of the zombies really is just dependent on the moment, because they tend to be quite intelligent with some things, but when Kamala launches a blade at them, they run straight into it and don't so much as duck. Also, there's an unnamed sorcerer here with an incredibly powerful magic sword. You'd think he would have shown up in Multiverse of Madness when they're trying to stop Wanda, but oh well. There's a little sequence where the Asgardian ships start firing on our heroes, but a sorcerer creates portals to make them fire on themselves. Except, she didn't make the portals until after they had already been firing, so there still would have been a rain of fire down on our heroes, which gets ignored. Also, you can't make more than one pair of portals with a sling ring. It's a one-at-a-time thing. Thor shows up and has Stormbreaker, which means that Wanda can create Stormbreaker. Again, we'll get to her power level later. Wanda eventually gets to Hulk and asks Kamala to help her supposedly save the world. It's unlikely Wanda will actually do that, but it makes sense for Kamala to agree to it because there's literally no other option. Everyone else is dead or about to die, and Kamala can't beat Wanda herself. Then Wanda says,
"And so the world begins again."
And weird effects go over the whole Earth. Kamala is woken up by her mom and meets Kate and Riri, then they hang out and it's all very cringe. But all of a sudden, she keeps seeing flashes of zombie universe and hears Riri saying,
Kamala hacked the thing! Don't believe what it is all fake! Kamala is not real!
Then we cut to credits and the show is over. So they tried to end the show with an Inception style, what's real, what's not ending. But the problem here is that neither option makes sense. So the option I think is most intended to be the case, but the one that I think makes less sense, is that the whole world is an illusion, and Riri actually is alive and getting through to Kamala. I don't believe that Riri would have survived the swarm of zombies she found herself surrounded by, and if she did, then Friday would be here with her. Also, she hacked the signal? Wanda is using magic, but with the level of technological illiteracy the writing has whenever Ironheart is present, I don't completely doubt that it could unironically be the intention. Also, Riri finding Kamala is insane. Riri was near Ohio, and Kamala is now in New Jersey. There's no way Riri could know where to find her. Then there's the question of what the nature of Kamala being here even is. Why don't the zombies go after her? And why did Wanda make an illusion so that Kamala believes everything was made right? And what was Wanda's actual goal with the stones? Nothing seems to have actually changed about the world, despite the massive world-spanning weird flashy thing. So let's explore the other option, that Wanda actually reshaped the world, and these flashes to zombie world that Kamala sees are just induced by PTSD or something. If that's the case, then we are left with the question of why Wanda during the whole show acted like such a villain. If she really just wanted to cure the world, she has no reason to fight everyone she sees, or just generally act scary rather than negotiating with them to help her out. Because we see that she can use illusions to come off as calm and diplomatic. It also makes it strange that the world is so different now. Like Riri and Kate being Kamala's friends, even though that only happened because of the apocalypse. This seems to be the show intending this to be an illusion, so this is what Kamala's mind conjures up, but I would argue the interpretation of this being real still does introduce less problems than the prior one. But yeah, neither one makes sense. In either world, Wanda just makes no sense throughout the show. She is incredibly powerful, to the point of being able to create a fleet of Asgardian ships with working guns, and create a copy of one of the strongest weapons in the entire MCU. Despite this level of power, our heroes manage to escape her and get away time and time again. It's the same problem as Multiverse of Madness, where they give Wanda insane reality warping powers, then ignore those whenever it would cause her to beat the heroes. And with this level of power, we're supposed to believe that Kamala is somehow necessary for her to harness the power of the stones? Hulk is already doing so. Not that he should be able to, but disregarding that, Wanda combining powers with Hulk should be enough to get done whatever she did at the end. Also, speaking of zombie Wanda, she got blown up by Infinity Ultron in What If's Season 1 finale. I guess you could argue that was a different zombie Wanda, but that episode is clearly pulling from the timelines we saw in prior episodes of the season, and this episode is a follow-up to episode 5 from that season, so saying they're different would be disingenuous, and I would instead consider this another contradiction. The writers probably just forgot that that happened. Zombies show bad. It's worse than the What If Zombies episode on pretty much all levels. Both have sparse elements of somewhat serviceable character work, sprinkled in among the largely dysfunctional plot, characters, and world, and basically nothing to say thematically. But I think the plot problems are worse here, and the handling of Zemo is notably bad, even by What If standards. The situations and characters rarely make it believable that this is a world that has been in a zombie apocalypse for 5 years. This show is more What If in all ways that matter, including quality. I'm giving this series a 2 out of 10, and I don't have number scores for the individual episodes because it's a continuous narrative. That's all I got, and as always, thanks for watching.